Hello and welcome everyone to another Co-Produced Care live stream. We've got a fantastic array of guests today, so do stay on. You can watch us back later, but we want to get you into the conversation. We'll be talking all things immigration policy, staffing in care, rebalancing the discourse, the conversation around social care, and look at this panel. I mean, I literally contacted everyone just before the bank holiday saying this is an immense area. It's something we need to talk about. Are you free? Can you come on? And everyone has really turned up for this discussion. And I think it's so important to make sure that we do rebalance the conversation, because if we don't do it, then who else is going to do it? And the intricacies with social care and recruitment and what it's going to mean, not just to us as providers and our ability to actually deliver care, but to people who need support. I can see that it's already affecting people. So put in the comments what you think about the immigration white paper. What difference is it going to make? How is it going to affect the sector? And what are your thoughts on the announcements for the white paper? So I am not going to talk too much at the minute. I will just bring Kat in first, because we had planned to do a wonderful live stream on social care and talk about Providers Unite. So we're going to kick off with that and then get into immigration policy proper. So you're up for a really good live stream today. So welcoming Kat. Hello, how are you?
I'm well, second time back, so yeah, I must be doing something right.
You definitely are. You definitely are. I mean, just a fountain of knowledge and everything that you do around the sector and galvanizing everyone and the energy as well. It's just infectious. Absolutely love it.
Good. Well, that's all I can bring. I'm happy with that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and we're happy to have you on. Honestly, such a treat. So I probably I don't need to do any introductions with you, but just introduce yourself just in case there is somebody in the world who doesn't know who you are exactly. And yeah, I know you wear a couple of hats and it's not just the Providers Unite stuff that you're supporting. So yeah, give us a little bit of an intro and maybe an update with what's going on with you and Providers Unite.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my main job is Bay Care Group. So I'm a social care provider, community care in the Southwest. So we have around about 360 staff and we do around 9,000 hours of care a week as it stands. So we do multiple different services, reablement, standard care, mental health, hospital discharge. Yeah, sort of a whole portfolio of services. And then in my spare time, or all the time, I'm one of the biggest champions of the Providers Unite movement, which I'm hopeful that everyone knows about. You know, we've been around and grown massively in just a few short months. You know, we've got thousands of care providers and managers, sector leaders, all now speaking in one voice, which is just amazing. And I haven't checked the numbers recently, but we were coming close to 5,000 now, which again is just, yeah, phenomenal. We've made national press almost weekly. We've flooded social media with like real frontline stories. We did our social media campaign on Tuesday again, which was just amazing. Because we don't know everyone that's following us all the time, and then we keep seeing all these other companies just pop up, sharing, getting involved. And I was actually at a roundtable event at the time, and everyone stopped just to do their two o'clock social media push. It was just amazing, and that was in London. And I'm thinking, oh, this is going on everywhere. And you know, we had one of the ladies from Scotland, and she was like, yeah, we're all doing it up in Scotland as well. So you know, we're having a really, really positive impact in the communities. We've met with MPs, councils, sector leaders, and what we've done over a short period of time, which we have to keep remembering. It feels like it's Providers Unite's been going on for ages, but actually over a short period of time, we brought together so many care providers just to have a platform that we sort of never have had before. And what started as a response to the national insurance increase has now become a full-on movement for workforce respect, fair funding, sector reform. immigration policy, and what we've been really good at is creating powerful visuals, campaigns, toolkits, and helping people hold leaders to account, and giving them the confidence to speak out, because I don't think a lot of providers have ever had that confidence, and what we're doing is giving them the tools to enable them to do that. And certainly regionally, there's so much movement going on behind the scenes by these, on behalf of providers as a collective, and it's really motivating to see that people now have those tools and resources, and they have the confidence, because I've never shut up, so I'm quite happy to take on local councils and care trusts if I feel things are not being done in the right way. But for Providers Unite, really have given people that platform to feel heard, safe, secured, and to make sure that they can speak the truth. We're showing up together and we're all speaking the truth, so nobody feels alone, and we're inviting people to have conversations with us instead of us sitting quietly in the corners like we have done for a long, long time. So yes, we've been busy.
You've been so busy, honestly, and so many people have been so busy. I remember on the last Providers Unite meeting I was on last night, there's just so much energy, and people are genuinely really worried about the sector, and having a vehicle. We've got the WhatsApp group, we've got you send out emails and stuff. Just having a platform where we can all come together, and I think it also highlights the need for, if you are a provider, to be part of a association. We'll speak to Melanie in a minute, but that's a really important vehicle to help, and you just really work with them, really share what you're going through, and just really support them to support you. So I think it's important that people be able to come together, but sometimes you do feel a little bit like helpless in terms of there's only so much you can push.
And at the moment, it's just like, what is next?
I know.
And in this sector, I've been in the sector for quite a long time now, and I'm just like, okay, what is tomorrow bringing? Because I honestly feel like, we're constantly under attack at the moment, and I can't prepare for anything because it's just wacky. One day with this, it's like COVID times, isn't it? So today you wake up, you've got to wear a mask. Tomorrow you don't have to wear a mask, and it's just as easy as that. And it's the policy's changed in a day, and this is sort of what's happening. Again, it's sort of, we're waking up and saying, right, today we're just going to attack this part of the social care sector, and you're going to have to find a way, and that's it. No more conversation. It's all done. And I'm just like, how can we be making these decisions that are so big, so quickly overnight without any real conversations? And I think that's what the scary thing is, that no thought or impact assessment is being done.
I was going to say, you posted, because like your LinkedIn is just great. You had, shame I don't have it to show. You had one where there was this game where you stack.
Yeah. Oh yeah, with the Jenga.
Jenga. Yeah. And then you were like, the whole immigration thing, it's like that is the bottom part of the Jenga, and it's like they've just like pulled it out, and you had like care and people that all just like collapses. And you were saying, where is the impact assessment? Which I don't think this government does. I think it does like clickbait stuff, and then it works backwards. We've got, if you don't mind, we've got some questions that's just really great in the chat. And if you are watching, please do get involved in the conversation. Maybe talk about where you are, or in the country, or ask a question, get involved in the conversation. So Isaac Samuel, hi Isaac. I know Isaac. He's asking, how do you keep up the morale of staff, so staff morale, with all these things going on? Because you've got the morale of like a provider wearing different hats, and I'm wondering, and that's a really good question, because there is quite negative at the minute. I'm not quite sure how you do it. I think maybe the thing with the staff morale is that people do it because they care about the people they look after. So I think, and I think
the thing for me as a provider is they can see that I'm fighting their corner. So I'm not sat here saying I'm worried over my business. For the last God knows how many years, every single increase that we've had from the councils, which has been way below what has been needed with inflation alone, we have not retained any of that. That percentage has always been offset into staff wages straight away, and we're an open book with our workforce, and we let them know what's going on. And I think with my team, they can see that I'm doing all of this. I just don't shut up going on about the respect that staff deserve, and I tell them every day, like, you don't listen to the headlines about it being a low skilled job. You look at the workforce that we have. I have the most skilled workforce, and I'm sure most providers do, and we invest heavily into them. And I think at the moment I've been sharing a lot that I've been doing with Shara, which is the mental health wellbeing app. Now that's been a really, really good tool for me and my staff, because there's daily exercises they can do for there, but I also do like a reward scheme through there, so I can send them sort of vouchers or meals or coffees. And it's just these sort of little things we do daily posts out to them, weekly huddles, we just keep reminding them how amazing they are. But that can only last so long. What they actually want is better wages, and to be more respected. I can only do what I can do as a provider here. They want to get involved, they want to make noise, so I've given my staff template letters. Like, you write to the MPs as well, you tell the MP what you're not happy with. I'm not sat here worried as a provider that they're throwing me under the bus. I know I do everything I can to support them, but you tell the MP how mad you are with the lack of respect, and that you're thinking of leaving the care sector, because there is a lot of people looking to exit the sector, which is understandable. There's not any positive headlines about the social care sector at all at the moment. It's all very much like we're removing this, we're stripping this. We've got providers like, how are we going to sustain the company and keep everyone employed? Those sort of conversations are happening all the time, and we're trying to reassure people, but actually we can only work with what we've got. And at the moment, what little we've got is just being stripped from us, one thing after another. And businesses are going to fold, and they are going to crumble, and it's really frightening and sad. And some of the bigger providers will survive, of course they will, but most of this sector is run by SMEs, and we need those SMEs. And we want people to remain having choice as well. So the government is disabling the sector every single day. It brings out a new announcement, and we've still not even overcome. We're only starting to see the impacts of the national insurance increase at the moment, which is absolutely tragic. And again, we just sit there and just think that resource could have just been paid into the front line. There's other measures that could be put into place to support the fair pay agreement, etc., than actually taking it away from the front line, because that's what they've done. If I'm sat here saying I've given my 3% increase year on year to my workforce, this year the government's taken more than 3% off me, and I've only got 3%. So that's not enabled me to give anything to my workforce, and that's because of their actions, not mine.
And I think it's these kind of conversations that sometimes people don't hear and they don't realise, because it's always a thing of, well, I think there's going to be money behind, under the sofa or somewhere that providers can just figure it out. And it's almost like it's going to take a crisis for the government to do anything about it. And actually, if I can bring it up, I interviewed an MP, and I did quiz him because he's a Conservative MP, and I was like, why didn't you sort it out all these years? But he said something quite interesting, which was basically alluding to the fact that I think politics is waiting for a real crisis in social care. I'll see if I can bring it up on
I think it goes back to the funding. If we haven't sorted out the funding, we're not going to sort out any of this. What I fear is that, because you mentioned the pandemic, we had a crisis, and therefore we all pulled together and sorted it out to a greater or lesser extent, that crisis. What I don't want to happen is for us to have a crisis in social care. And I'm about to see, I'm sure the comments are about to fly up as they were already there. But a real crisis, a major crisis in social care, where, to be frank, people die. And then we go, now we need to sort it out. we must get there before that point. But I think we are very close to that point. I think we are only a parliament away from some real problems. And therefore, as I say, we it's difficult for me because not being a member of parliament for 14 years.
I'm going to bring that out just because it's a bit glitchy. But yeah, I mean, I think that's what's going on in politics.
It's a reactive system, isn't it? We just react when we need to, and we make that next day decision, and that next day decision, and it's going, with the immigration side. We had an announcement about the trade deal in India, and then the next day we're then saying, but actually now you're not allowed to bring people into work in the UK. We look stupid as a country. We're making these ad hoc decisions, and they're also coming across like a dictatorship, not a government, policy that's good for the people in our country. It's very worrying. And I've always made it really clear I'm not into politics at all, but I'm just every day my jaw drops with what's next. I've seen all the stuff yesterday with the removing land off people if they haven't built houses in time with planning permissions, etc. The councils can now take back the land, and if you don't meet deadlines. And I'm just like, hang on a minute, this is really becoming a dictatorship now, and it's worrying, absolutely.
So I'm going to bring a few more guests in a minute. Just to close off, what are your hopes for Providers Unite? And specifically, we've got a great comment from Isaac talking about how we're involving people with lived experience. And I think that's so important. And I know that you're passionate about that. And I know that Providers Unite is also passionate about that. But if you could talk to that point as well.
I mean, we have so many people involved in Providers Unite that are not just the providers. The Providers Unite is anyone providing a service within the sector for the sector. So this includes your paid carers, your unpaid carers. Everyone is welcome to Providers Unite, and we encourage you to get involved. And you're then welcome to come to all the planning meetings that we have. What is next? What do we want? There's lots of stuff going on behind the scenes at the moment. So, but no, we absolutely need that workforce involved. And I know as providers, we come and we get the feel from our staffs, and we bring that to the meetings. I mean, I certainly do anyway. So yeah, no, get involved, sign up on the website, email us. We're always wanting the workforce to step in and get involved. And like I'm saying to providers as well, let them message MPs as well. So you get your workforce involved, give them something to do to be part of the movement as well. I think that's so crucial that your MPs and the councils are seeing the front lines fears, thoughts and feelings around it all.
Right.
And they won't take it from me. So get your staff to do it, get your clients to do it, get your advocates to do it.
And I'll just put up a little slide here. I've got some information. There we are. Providers Unite, that's the email, and it's the web page. So thank you so much for that, Kat.
No problem.
I'm going to bring in Melanie Weatherly and Carolina if they are ready to come in. Yay. Because we've got two more perspectives now, because we've also got the care worker perspective, and obviously even more providers who are involved with the things that you do, Melanie. So maybe just a quick 30-second introduction, and then I will let you carry on with your concerns about the immigration white paper as well. So can I start with you, Melanie?
Hi, my name's Melanie Weatherly. Like Kat, my main job in theory is that I run a domiciliary care organisation, but I must have a clone because I don't do that anymore. But I chair the Care Association Alliance and Lincolnshire's Care Association, but I also lead on the International Recruitment Regional Hub in the East Midlands. So I have quite a different perspective possibly on the international recruitment.
Okay, that's really interesting to know. And Carolina, just a quick intro.
Good afternoon, everybody. Carolina Gully, CEO of the Care Workers Charity and a former care worker, migrant care worker as well.
So actually, I'm going to come to you, Melanie, because I think that you were saying that you've got a different perspective. So I wouldn't mind hearing your perspective to start off with.
So I think I wasn't surprised at the announcement that they were going to do away with the care visa, because as a sector, we have managed it really, really badly. There are people out there who are subject to modern slavery and exploitation, and we can't shy away from that, Sophie. So I'm really not surprised that they said we're not doing this anymore. But what they should then have done is put in the kind of thing that Salvatore has mentioned in the chat. We needed a different, better managed way, because I don't think we can manage without international recruits at all. But we don't need tens of thousands of people who are destitute and walking the streets, because we as a sector and the Home Office didn't manage it properly. So I really was not surprised at the announcement. I was horrified by the fact that they said we were an unskilled occupation. That's clearly rubbish, and I think we've all said that. And I also think they're being really unclear about what happens to the people who are already here. There's a lot of concern amongst those people that they won't have been here long enough to apply for indefinite leave to remain. You know, are they all going home in 2028? And the answer I had was, we're working on the transitional arrangements. We'll let you know as soon as we've drafted them. But that's not reassuring for our workforce or people who draw on care and support, who are looking at that and thinking, so we're talking about 3 years, so what's happening in 3 years' time? But I do think there is a lot of view that all of the people who are displaced and who've been exploited, it's all to do with crooks that have come into the sector. Sadly, Sophie, that's not completely true. Some of the people who have been exploiting our international recruits are long-standing care providers. And we need to find roles for all of those displaced workers as quickly as we possibly can. Because the Prime Minister's saying, well, there's tens of thousands that don't have a job, so you don't need them. So why do you need any more? That's how I look at it. I think we have collectively got to do something to prove them wrong.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Carolina, from your point of view, I don't know whether you wanted to come back on any of that, or just from the care worker point of view, because you've worked so well with care workers and getting their view on social care and employment, and what they go through. What are your reflections on the white paper?
So, first of all, reactions from care workers that are on our advisory board and our care worker champions, who are migrant workers. You know, there was outrage, an outrage over undermining of the skill and importance of a care worker role. Most of all, you know, at CWC, would just find it unacceptable for anybody to be speaking about social care as unskilled. And I think when politicians say unskilled, they also mean unimportant. The whole idea of moving the goalpost for citizenship from 5 to 10 years, again, a big issue. How much more do people have to do to qualify for citizenship? Why the 10 years? 5 years is already a lot of hard work for people to put in and a lot of rules to obey. Then, like Melanie said, obviously we've had an issue with care workers on the visa who have been treated very poorly by a variety of providers. And I agree with Melanie, it's not just by those who set up a company in the last 12 months or 24 months. But for me, a lot of that is on the Home Office. A lot of that is on the regulator, on CQC, you know, actually checking well-being of the workforce. And it shouldn't be just checking well-being of the workforce that comes from abroad. It should be checking well-being of the workforce altogether. And it should be much more of a priority. It should be a priority for CQC, because workforce that's not treated well cannot be expected to deliver great care. Again, I agree with Melanie. I don't think the social care sector can survive without international recruits. And just to say, oh, we're stopping it for now because we don't need unskilled care workers coming in, it's a very short-term response to a very voter political problem rather than the problem that social care faces. I think it was a knee-jerk reaction to other things rather than necessarily thinking, what does social care need long-term? And what the social care need long term is more care workers, and it's going to be, increasing over the years, over the decades. And we do need to find places and work for those who have already come over on the visa, and we have to make these people safe and secure in their employment and in the status. But we also need more people to come over, because if the argument of domestic workforce can cover the vacancies was true, we should have never had the problem with as many vacancies as we have in the care sector. That hasn't occurred in the last 3 years. It's not a new issue, is it? We've had it for many, many years, and it's not being filled by domestic workforce. And international workforce is a part of it. And people bring, it's not just the work, but they bring richness of culture and language and understanding, because they also support people from different backgrounds, and we need that. So I think, generally speaking, from care workers that we speak to, they felt very hurt and upset, as if the contributions they've made are not important, have been completely dismissed. There are definitely a lot of those that are worried what is going to happen to them because they haven't finished their visa yet. And when you add to it what happened last year with the no dependent rule as well, and it's just this general attitude to international workforce, I think, is rather poor and disrespectful, considering what people do contribute. So it's very difficult. The sector needs the visa, and it definitely needs to be managed and monitored much better, with a focus on the well-being of people who come over and work. And I hope that the government will reconsider. We have to make a strong case for this to be reconsidered. And I hope they're not going to wait too long until some horrendous things happen for that to be reconsidered as well.
I think that's absolutely true, and that was why I put up that clip from Greg, the MP, because he's saying, and a lot of people are starting to say, that politicians think that social care has ridden out so many waves and done so well that actually it can just cope, and they're not too worried about anything happening until things really start to fall apart, which is so sad. Because I think one of the comments that Isaac was making was, there's people with lived experience, there's people behind all of this, and a lot of people who go into caring, they want to care because they want to look after those people, which I found really, we talk about the discourse and how people talk about care. I found it really annoying that you're not thinking that you don't want to be looked after by just anybody. DBSs alone will probably stop a lot of people who aren't working at the moment from getting a care job. And also health and social care is one of the most regulated industries. So there's a huge amount of training, and there's a lot of things behind it, which mean that people don't want to do care, can't do care. Not everyone can actually be a care worker. And I think that dismissing of it, and maybe it comes back to the professionalization of it. And I know, you've got a lot of thoughts on that as well, Carolina, but I just thought, coming from the government, that was deeply, deeply irresponsible. Before we move on, I do want to pop in, because you ended on the idea of well-being, Carolina. Of course, you've just, the Care Workers Charity, released a fantastic report on well-being of care workers, and there was some really interesting results and data from that, and you spoke to over 2,000 care workers, and that's like what kind of thing I love what you do, and I feel like Providers Unite and associations do try and do that too as well, is getting the data from your group. So you're getting the data, you're getting the information, you're getting the vignettes from care workers, and you're involving them, you're co-producing with them to get their voice out, which means you don't necessarily come with an agenda. Some of the results and the research that you did doesn't support anything that I've heard of before. It was just very interesting to read. So I'm going to pop that in the chat, the link, so people can engage with it. Did you want to? Oh yes, Melanie, you wanted to come back on domestic workforce as well.
Yeah, and commenting on Simon's point, I think recruiting men, Simon, we have recruited loads of men, but we can't find work for them in home care. and I think that needs a conversation, not just providers and people who draw, but mostly importantly, people who draw on services. Because I do think sometimes our social work teams suggest to people that they would like a lady, rather than actually giving them the respect to ask them, would you like to try a man, at least for some of your care? But I do think we need to put more effort into the domestic workforce. I still don't think it will cover the international recruits, and I think it would be daft to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We've got some amazingly committed, skilled people who have chosen to come and work in our sector. But there are probably some people who, because of the pandemic, particularly if they were young during the pandemic or left school during the pandemic, who need some help to enter our workforce. But it's no point just saying replace them with the domestic workforce. Between us, we wrote a workforce strategy. So could the DH just adopt it, please, and fund it and let us get on with it? And maybe looking at Isaac's comments, I wonder actually if we need to work more closely with people who draw on care and support, because sometimes I don't think we work together to put a joint message. It would be good perhaps to talk to some people who have had care from international workers, maybe against their better judgment, but maybe there was nobody else to start with, but they've changed their mind. I think we need a balanced view. We have to get some of, particularly the younger people, off the economically inactive list and into this wonderful profession that we all belong to. But that's not going to be quick and easy and needs funding. But even when we do that, we live in a global world. Health and care is a global profession. We can't have no international recruits at all. But maybe we need a better managed version, and maybe we need to explain to the Home Office exactly how they should have been regulating it before they start again.
Here's the thing. There's explaining and then there's talking to a brick wall. I feel like that I've been in lots of advisory groups, and you talk and I'm looking at my diary and I'm like, I have no time to be in this group, but I'm going to make time because it's going to make a difference. And then you almost get overwhelmed thinking, is it really making a difference, or are just people making you busy? You know how some people might invite you to the number 10 so you can take a selfie outside the door and you feel like you're really important, making an impact, but actually nothing realistically changes for anybody anywhere. So that's why I think there's room for everything. So I think it needs to be all angles. So it needs to be your associations that you're doing, Melanie. You need to be Carolina's work. It needs to be providers unite. It needs to be people with lived experience. It just needs to be more the same, louder, and people just not being scared about, blocking a few roads for some peaceful protest now and again. I think stepping up is the time, really, because we either do it or we just say, actually, we're all just going to exit it and just not choose a different profession to work in. But I personally don't want to do that. I love it. So I think we all do an amazing job, and it makes a huge difference. And reaching out to the younger workforce, absolutely. We had our first one of our managers is 23, and she's absolutely fantastic, going from strength to strength, and she manages an outstanding care home. So but then she has been coached by people who've been in the profession for like 30 years. So you need that whole spectrum, and a lot of not just age variety, but like gender, as Simon was suggesting. We are going to probably close this off in a second, but Kat, did you want to come back with anything?
I mean, for me, the whole sort of announcement, it just felt cold, dismissive. The workforce was talked about like it was a problem to be fixed, and not people that had sort of carried the sector through some of its worst years and through, the challenging times we were facing with the workforce crisis. And the whole announcement, to me, it lacked respect. The language, for me, again, reinforced stigma. And it was quite clear it was care workers are expendable, and we're just going to take away the arm that's been sort of carrying the sector for the last couple of years. And I completely reject everything that they've sort of said about the sector as a whole being unskilled, you know. But what Melanie's saying, what Caroline was saying about, you know, other providers that have not been doing things in the right way, it's so sad. It is true, yeah, and it is really sad. But I think a lot of that needs to come back onto the Home Office. I've had my recent Home Office inspection. We maintained an A rating, A-rated rating, and it was a lot. There was a lot we had to go through. They were interviewing staff, you know. We've had Home Office turn up here because a member of the public have made some wacky accusations about them all living in one big house together, etc. You know, they were on me. They were on me all the time because I have 156 international workers, you know, but we've still proven that we do things in the right way. We treat them exactly the same as our entire workforce, and they've all got access to well-being, mental health support, you know, you name it, we really look after them. So the majority of those providers that have let down the sector, they should have been dealt with, in my opinion. They should be dealt with, and the Home Office should have stricter measures in place to stop these providers getting their license in the first place. But initially, certainly in my area, a load of the COVID funding went to pay for people to get their license. So the council's actually paid for us to get our license. I put it out to all providers, and I think there was only 2 of us in our area that went for it. You know, so everything was backed by government, backed by councils, paid by councils. You know, we'll bring them over. We'll pay their sponsor fees. We'll pay their housing. We'll pay their alliances to keep on managing their welfare and their mental health. But actually, today they're not important. They're not welcome to stay here anymore. We're stripping all that funding, and we're going to use it to hopefully train up all the people that are on benefits that are ready and waiting to come and work in social care, which we know is not true. And over my years here, I've watched the councils fund Care Friends. I've watched them fund unlimited training bundles, packages. They've paid recruitment campaigns for me. We just cannot get the workforce. Right. I go and speak in colleges, you name it. I walk around with a bloody sandwich board on. You know, we've done it all. We've done everything we possibly can. But that workforce just isn't ready and waiting. And it's what makes it more appealing. And unfortunately, funding, the right pay will attract more people to become interested. Oh, if I could earn a good wage from this as well, is it something that I could do? Is it something that I could change my direction a little bit? And I'm never one to always go straight back to the pound, how much we get in the money. You know, I always think of creative ways round, but this sector needs to be rewarded financially as well as with all the training that we've got, and we absolutely don't need to keep reinventing the wheel and doing new more workforce strategies and plans.
Thank you.
Saying, you know.
Thank you so much. I love it when you get into something. It's like I don't want to stop you. I'm going to have to over time. Thank you so much. Caroline, can I come back for you for the last reflections on this?
I think going back to what was said about we need to wait for social care to be in crisis, only then there'll be recognition. We've been through one crisis after another. We push through, but there is a cost to it. I don't think politicians understand that there is a cost to people who draw care, cost to care workers, there's cost in lives, there's cost in mental health, well-being, etc. So that I don't know what worse crisis than COVID they can think of we need for it to actually be understood, recognized, and acted upon. So that's quite worrying. But most of all, I think we need to be recognizing care workers for what they do every day. And like Kat said, pay is important, but pay isn't the only thing. And we all need to think what else can we do to show care workers that what's being said about them being unskilled isn't what the sector actually knows to be true.
Exactly. And that's a wonderful point. And someone's put something on the chat about being upset about being told that our workforce is unskilled. So thank you all so much. I'm going to take you out now. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. This bit is always a little bit clunky, as I tell people, and we're going to switch over and invite some new guests into the live stream who again have turned up last minute for me, and I'm just so grateful. Thank you so much. So we'll launch straight into it. We did start a little bit late and we are running over, but if you guys do need to move off at past on the dot, that's absolutely fine. If you can stay a little bit longer, that's a blessing. But shall I just go around for some intros first and then we'll get into it? So shall I start with you, Vicky?
Hi, Sophie. Yes, I'm the MD of an independent care provider in the southeast. We're based in Brighton. Compared to CAT and some of these other big providers, we're relatively small. But I think over the years that we've been going, we've had sort of quite a big voice on the sector and tried to do our bit. So, we're all looking at the bigger picture.
Thank you. And Stella?
Hi, thank you. I'm Stella Shaw and I'm the founder and registered manager for Stella Care. We're based in the northwest of England, deliver about 5,000 hours a month, relatively small as well compared to the bigger corporations. But I have a workforce of 40 staff, majority all migrant workers. So for me, I'm intensely passionate and proud of my workforce and what they have achieved and what they are continuing to achieve. And yeah, it's just shocked us all to the core, to be honest, the recent news. So, but yeah, thank you very much for inviting me today.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. And Fraser?
Hi everyone, my name is Fraser Rickersonson and I'm the Policy Manager at Care England. And Care England, for those who may not be aware, we're a representative body for independent social care providers, and that's both older persons, working age adults, supported living and all kind of facets of care.
Thank you all for that. I'm going to come to you, Stella, just because of the amount of, staff, overseas staff that you've employing, and what I want to understand what the impact you think of the white paper will have once it all starts to kick in, and how, if you are able to plan for that in any way.
I think I do agree with Melanie in relation to, the lack of due diligence from the Home Office and the exploitation and opening the door the way they did for COVID a few years back has led to a situation that isn't ethical for workers. But while I understand that, what I don't understand is the lack of workforce strategy working alongside it. Now, for me, it's not as if I'm not trying to recruit domestically. It's not as if I'm not paying £1,000 a month to Indeed or wherever to try and get recruits. It just doesn't happen because I don't think that it's recognised in the country. And my argument is that if we do pay the fair wage of £13.71 or whatever it is, I don't think that's still enough to attract a domestic workforce. I don't know. I'm asking the question, if it's at 15, 16, £20 an hour, would that be enough to attract domestically? We've banned 0-hour contracts. We pay an annual salary, in line, hopefully, with the care workers in an NHS. So because we recognise we have to make it fair. But at the same time, it's the domestic recruitment and the lack of strategy that the government have given us or not given us to say, well, that's fine, we need to reduce. I don't think anyone's sort of arguing with that. But at the same time, well, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to? I cannot guarantee the hours I'm doing now in 3 years' time if I have to rely on domestic recruitment. And that is the picture that I'm faced with. So again, it's about more money, it's about more advertising, but nothing's coming through the doors. I can't even recruit using the displaced worker hub that the Home Office have now said that we have to recruit. I don't know if anyone else can get through to anybody. I've not had any applications. I need staff. I can't recruit. I am chasing the hubs all of the time. It's just, again, what Kat said, coming back to what Kat said, they've put out another thing that is reactive, rather than thought out, and we're all having to be here picking up the pieces and try and protect the vulnerable adults and people in our communities that we are trying to care for. It's just madness to me. Sorry, I've had a bit of a rant, but nothing's making any sense. And as a provider, I just don't know what that future looks like. And I think, the rhetoric is very negative. For me, I've got 60% female, 40% workers that are male, and I have tried to change the rhetoric and change that mantra of it's only female to the point that, well, no, I have got a skilled workforce. I am training them as skilled care workers. It doesn't matter that they're male or female, or where they come from, in order to deliver that care. And we have had really good feedback from that. And I think our local authority are really open to that, which we're very grateful for. But it shouldn't have to come to that, should it really? But we are where we are. And I think, it doesn't matter what we are all doing, what we're trying to do. We're pushing against closed doors all the time, is how I feel.
It's a real heartfelt reply, and I really appreciate that. And I think a lot of people will actually relate to what you're saying. The hubs, what you were talking about, was really interesting as well. You're being told there's lots of different avenues and lots of different things you can do, but when you actually try and use them, it doesn't work in reality. And then I asked, how can you plan? You can't plan. There's nowhere to plan. And it's really weird, because I just thought the whole idea of government is that they are supposed to do the planning, and then you do the thing of, for the country, to provide a service. But there's no planning, so they're going to the end result without anything in between, and it's impossible. And that's the stage that you and many people are at. Vicky, any reflections from you, and especially about how you might think of planning for the workforce with all these changes happening?
I mean, I agree with Stella, everything you said, Stella. It's impossible to plan. I think, just going back to something that Melanie said previously, about there have been problems with immigration and the process and the policy. We know that. We all agree that there have been some providers that have let the sector down, and hopefully they've had their licenses revoked. But I don't think, as a sector, it's our responsibility. These processes should have been, or these policies should have been monitored to the highest level, as they should do with other areas of our society. And I think, anytime there is something with a potential of a financial gain, there is going to be someone who is going to try and navigate the system. But it doesn't mean that process has to be cancelled. I mean, take our benefits system. How many people navigate that system and receive benefits when they're not supposed to be receiving benefits? We know that's happening. The government knows it's happening, but the government aren't saying, okay, we're going to shut down the whole system. They're trying to work out ways of preventing that happening. And that's exactly the same with the immigration policy. Instead of saying we're shutting down the whole system, they should have been looking at, or should still be looking at, how can they correct the errors that they made by not monitoring the system properly. Because actually what they've done now is just they're reinforcing that negative narrative that we're trying to get away from. It's great that we're all here talking about this particular subject, rebalancing the discourse, but I wonder if it should be about rebalancing and completely reframing, because rebalancing would be suggesting that we need to change a few elements in the conversation already, but it feels like, and I think everything I'm reading and hearing, is that we need to entirely change the lens with which we look at the care sector. All of this talk about poor pay, negativity, unskilled workers, we know, the majority of providers know that is just not the case. We're actually working really, really hard. Providers like us, like Stella, like the big providers, we're working really, really hard to reverse the damage that the local authorities are doing, because the local authorities are commissioning all of these hours of care at a really, really low rate, which is forcing the hourly rate down in some situations with some providers. And then we are then coming the other way and saying, look, here are the benefits. We also have salaried contracts for our caregivers, trying to professionalise the sector, focusing on training, all of those things. And yet the narrative remains, well, are you not too expensive? Because the comparison is to what the local authority are paying. And we know that the local authority are paying a really, really low, unsustainable rate. So we do have to really reframe, I think, the whole sector in the way we frame that discourse, because everything is going wrong. You know, the domestic workforce are not looking to come and join us. And we think, why is that? It probably was historically solely around pay, whereas actually the national minimum wage, and then of course consequently the wages that we're paying has increased. So if you look in the hospitality sector, you know, hotels, restaurants, bars, you know, those rates are the same, but they're not getting the same terrible press that we're getting in our sector. You know, so it's not as though the care sector are paying £8, £9 an hour. You know, we all wish we could pay more, but you know, our rates are comparable to lots of other sectors, but we're the ones that are getting it in the neck and having all of these things stripped away from us. And I just think the announcements are completely short-sighted. They're lazy. They didn't think things through. They didn't need to think things through, because the result of their decision is what they wanted to happen. They didn't want it to be repaired, the immigration system, I think, because otherwise they would have done that. I think we have to be up to that fact that, you know, it could have been easy enough to think, okay, we need to put these different monitoring processes. The unscrupulous providers, if they'd have wanted to do that, they would have done it. And for whatever reason, you know, I think we will probably know politically where they're leaning to. And this terrible focus on immigration and overseas workers, you know, we as providers are not discriminating. It's the government that's discriminating. You know, our local domestic workforce and our overseas workforce work fabulously together. They are one team. They're not looking at each other and making comment about each other. They work as a team. They support each other. They're treated exactly the same. They treat each other exactly the same as they would do for the domestic workforce. So the discrimination isn't within us. It's coming from the outside. And I think that's the bit that needs to be completely reframed.
Absolutely. And thank you for coming back to sort of like the main question. And there was so much in that and so many insights, and people do keep the chat going, comments going. I'll pull some up in a second. I want to come to Fraser. And obviously I know that in Care England, you do so much work with so many people. You speak to policy advisors. You would have thought, having so much interaction with you guys, and I feel like there's been lots of interaction with policymakers over the last few years, that something like this wouldn't have been A, framed in this way, and B, put forward like it is, and because of the impact it has on the social care sector. Were you frustrated by the announcement on immigration in the white paper, and how is Care England trying to reframe the narrative or support understanding with policymakers on the impact?
I found it absolutely frustrating, to be honest. It's really difficult when you're having those conversations and you're working with policymakers, you're working with decision makers at local level and national level, and then you find out on the news that there's massive change and they have disregarded all of the fears and anxieties of previous visa restrictions in place, such as not bringing dependents in. It has massive concern from not just me as working in like a step removed from direct care, but for all of our members. My phone has not stopped going off with different care providers coming to us saying, what does this mean? I've seen this on the news. Just not even just asking for solutions or anything else, just airing their frustration because the government hasn't been listening. And the 2 points I'd like to raise here is, firstly, you know, this government have a 212 seat majority in Parliament. So as much as ourselves as Care England and care providers directly, everything else, we can raise concerns, everything like that. They have got such a powerful majority that they can push through almost anything that they want to push through. There's no direct opposition or one singular entity in the Commons that can almost make it a bit easier for us to navigate that position and hold them a bit more to account. But secondly, conversations with ministers and other decision makers, they've got the mentality that the damage was already done back in April 2024 when on the health and social care visa you couldn't bring dependents in anymore. Their data and the skills for care data shows that there's around a 90% reduction in visa applicants since that decision's been made. So a lot of the mentality at the top end is how much more of an impact can this change have? However, we see the exact opposite. We've got a survey going around with our members just to understand what the impact will mean directly now and what it will mean within the 3 years. And the conversation is completely different. You know, in the last 100 applicants that some of our members have been hiring, 50% of those have been from international waters. You know, they've been coming over from all sorts of different countries. And it's one of those points that in the government's impact assessment, they've said that they estimate that it'll be around 7,000 workers a year will not be coming into the sector anymore because of these changes. But that doesn't match the data that Skills for Care are reporting, or which said there's about 10,000 in the last quarter, in the third quarter of last year, and other areas as well. So it's almost as if what other people have said on the call today is that it feels like a knee-jerk reaction policy, and it has makes a lot of decisions, and some of the policies that they say will mitigate the challenges aren't yet in place. The Fair Pay Agreement, that's been referenced time and time again, as this will help support the domestic workforce, this will bring people in, this will solve the gap that international workers will create with this new policies. Fair Pay Agreement won't come in for another 2-3 years. It's still in the process of being developed. It's the structure isn't even there, let alone the actual process of developing what the fair pay is for a sector-wide negotiation. So they've saying they've got the solution. They haven't got the solution yet. And they're just expecting care providers to just take it on board. And this is again after national insurance contribution changes. This is again after they've scrapped some of the apprenticeship schemes going from schools getting people into social care. And it's just time and time again of just policies impacting the sector. And the only solutions that we have are promises of this will come down later down the line. The Casey Commission, that's meant to be reporting the final report in 2028. But if you look at the terms of reference, they give up to 10 years for the policies to be implemented. The sector's saying we don't have 3 years to wait till 2028, and we don't have 10 years for the policies to be implemented. 10 years, governments could change. If you look at the opinion polls currently, Labour are not in favour to win the next election if it was due tomorrow. And if tides do change when the next election comes, they certainly may not have the same amount of majority as they do. So this is the time to really push through ambitious policies. And they are, but just not in our favour. So it's about changing that narrative.
And I'm going to come to Vicky in a minute to talk about workforce. In Care England, what are you doing to trying to change that narrative? Is there anything that members you want them to do to help support you in changing that narrative? I don't know if you seems like you've already had surveys and you're already collecting data. Do you need people to interact more with you?
I think the case studies is so important. There was a comment there, it popped up on the screen, but has gone again. But we can gather as much data as you want and enough figures and everything else, but this is about people. We need to hear the impact that these workers are having, such positive impact. We also need to hear from residents as well. This is going to change who's supporting them, and it's going to for families of residents as well. It's that uncertainty of now who's going to be looking in. You hear narrative as well of taking people off benefits, putting them into care, or trying to get people putting people into care and just recruiting anyone and everyone. But that isn't how our sector works. This is such an emotional and vulnerable sector. People a lot of the time, this is people who are near the end of their lives, who are in a very vulnerable place. All of that, you don't want just anyone caring for them. You want someone who is trained to be able to do the work, which everyone is who comes into the sector, but also someone who's emotionally able to look after them. And you don't just get that by just recruiting anyone in the streets. So it's just very important that we don't just reject people who are willing and able to and want to work in the sector, but they develop that workforce strategy to be able to make sure that we're getting the right people into the care. So the case studies, the context, the hearing directly from workers who are impacted on this, from domestic workers, and hearing about the impact it's going to have for them as well, because they're going to be stretched in the interim. They're going to have more work than they originally bargained for, and some people may not be able to cope with that as well. So it's about hearing those cases. We've got a survey going around just to really gather that data, but the human impact is just as important as the data. And I'll share my email as well afterwards, or like talk to people about that, just to get out there and get people to feedback. But we're briefing all of every MP. We're working with the Health and Social Care Select Committee, and we're also working with a number of different local authorities to help channel that frustration and lobby for that change. We've got some solutions that we're working on in the pipeline with some other organisations as well, and ways that we can amend what the government have put forward. But a lot of the changes announced, although some are standard and will be coming into place regardless, others are up for consultation. So we'll be making representations, but we're telling all of our members, and we're telling the sector, and we're telling other organisations, this is everything that we're saying. If you agree, put that within your representation. It's such a long process to be able to respond to a consultation. They're like 80 pages long. They have 40 questions.
Yeah.
And, you guys have to deliver care. You don't have time to sit down and write a full essay. Just in your spare 2 minutes you get in a day, just to be able to feedback to the government. We're going to do that, but we're going to send that to you, so that rather than one organisation that represents a certain amount of care providers sending something, it's us, and then however many more providers who want to send that in forward as well. Make the message clear. You want to make sure it never falls out the forefront.
Brilliant. You're doing loads of great work, and I really appreciate that. Vicky, can I come to you next on domestic workers?
Yeah, I just wanted to raise a comment about, the focus on, we don't need immigration, we don't need overseas workers. Let's use the 5 million people who are not in work at the moment, and draw those into the sector. And I just think that's absolutely laughable, because, we've got a wonderful domestic workforce, as I'm sure you have, Stella, and all the other providers, but they are people who have actively chosen to come into the sector. They've got all the qualities, they've got the experience, whatever it may be. They're working in the sector out of choice. The 5 million people, and I say the 5 million because I think it's 9 million, wasn't it? And then 5 million of the work age, that with that excluding disabilities, mental health issues, those type of things, people who are ready to go to work or able to go to work. If they wanted to be in the sector, they would be. And the ones that have made that decision to not work or to be on benefits long term, that's a lifestyle choice for a lot of people. It's not, benefits are supposed to be an interim period when in between jobs, and we know that there are people in that group that have been on benefits for years and years and years. They've chosen to be. Why would we want them to come into our sector and look after our vulnerable people? And I just think the government spoke about excessive immigration being sort of undermining our social cohesion, which again is absolute nonsense, because I think the social cohesion is damaged when we push forward the negative narrative about overseas workers being a problem. That's what damages the cohesion. But actually, if we talk about them as being, exactly the same as us, as our group, we're all human beings, we're all here in the sector actively choosing to be in it. The 5 million people who aren't working are not going to solve our problem, and we need to think about domestic workforce and overseas workforce as a multi-pronged sort of approach.
Absolutely. I wanted to come to you, Stella, for some last thoughts. I know we've gone over a bit, and thank you for staying on. And I think, on that point of, I put up a comment, and I think it's someone who draws on from health and social care and says that as someone who receives care, if you have care workers who aren't trained or their heart isn't in the job, then you feel so vulnerable, and you're already vulnerable because that's why, maybe the reason why you're drawing from social care, but actually then you don't have any support from the right people. That's so important. I think people need to put themselves in the shoes of people, because it could be any of us at any point of our lives where we have to rely on someone else, and who do we want to support us, and how we need them to be supported in the right way. We need the right people in the workforce, so you can't just pick anybody, and that's really, really important. Stella, did you have any last thoughts?
You asked me a question at the beginning and asked, planning for 3 years. And I'm just going to answer the question and what I think social care is going to look like in 3 years, and turn it around just slightly. With all the reduced costs and everything that we are struggling to achieve and meet these unrealistic demands, all we're going to do is drive bad practice further. There's going to be people that are cutting corners. The home care industries are going to be more not providing the compliance that they need to do. It's going to actually maybe generate further exploitation of care workers, compliance, reduce the quality. And is that the crisis level we have got to get to in 3 years' time before anything is done? You mentioned the MP earlier, and he said in his clip about people are going to die. And even the numbers don't add up. We've only got 39,000 displaced workers, and we've got a vacancy rate of 131. And they're reducing it further. Nothing is adding up. So we're head on, and I don't mean to be negative. I try and find the positive in everything. But in the next 3 years, it is absolutely crunch time with the care sector. And we cannot just put sticky plasters over it and have the two governments competing against reform over immigration at the minute. And it's just a political gunfire that we're just all caught in the middle of, and it's just not acceptable.
Thank you so much for those points. I think that's a really good point to end on, like the urgency that we have, and we need to get this sorted, and that we need to respect the sector, really. I appreciate it so much. And really thank you so much to all of you who have joined me today. I'm going to let you go and enjoy the rest of your afternoon, if you could enjoy it after that really hefty, in-depth conversation. Thanks everyone for the comments as well. I do want people to please like, subscribe and share, especially share, because I think more people need to hear from these voices. We're grateful for the press for giving us more time, but sometimes they have an agenda, or the questions aren't quite right, or they don't quite give you enough space to say what you need to say. And I hope we've been able to allow people to do that. So thank you to all my guests for joining me today. And I'm, didn't mean to put you in solo layout, myself in solo layout. And yeah, no, I just wanted to encourage people to interact with the work that we're doing. And also, I would really be grateful if you could just pop in the chat any other subjects that you'd like us to cover in our co-produced care live streams like this. We try to do as many as we can. Some of them are ad hoc, and some of them are planned. We have some more planned ones, but I think sometimes the ad hoc ones are quite useful because it really gives an opportunity to give a different and more accurate narrative from the care sector, people who work on it. We have had people with lived experience on the live stream before. I don't think we do that enough, so maybe someone might want to put a comment to say that they'd like to see more people with lived experience. And yeah, really appreciating all your comments there. I want to put them all up, but I need to close off now too. So yeah, no, thank you everyone for joining in, and hoping that you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And I really just need people to like like the stream, and it's a live stream I call it, but you know, really you're seeing it on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn. And yeah, really appreciate if you all could do a bit of liking, a bit of sharing, a bit of subscribing. It means a lot to us. We just do this because we're passionate about the sector, and it all does help to get our voices out there. So yeah, take care everybody, and have a lovely rest of your day. Bye everyone.